do you do good in your world? Do you volunteer? Raise money? Donate money? Have you ever organized a group of people to make something happen, like go say an ideas festival? Do you ever protest anything that you don't agree with? Well, keep doing those things. Those actions are at the heart of civil society, and they're what make our democracy work. Next question. How many of you have ever done those things using something like this? A phone. Have you ever texted money to a nonprofit? Organized your friends to make something happen using your digital social network? Or written open source code and shared it with the world? Those are also great things, and we need you to keep doing those things as well. They're at the heart of digital civil society, and you are busy inventing it. And I want you to keep doing those things. Please, keep doing those things. But I also want to invite you to join me and a small group of others who are starting to think critically and hard about what it really means to move our civil society actions into a digital environment and do what we can to make sure that it's going to continue to work for all of us. So let me tell you 3 little stories about digital civil society. My own story starts somewhat oddly at the Super Bowl last year, Super Bowl 46. New York Giants versus the New England Patriots. As with any Super Bowl, there were about, 1 billion people getting ready to watch this football game. Many of them are more interested in the advertisements than in the football game, sure, but most of them are interested in the football game. But within that billion people, this time around, there were 8 people in San Francisco, Miami, New York, Chicago, Seattle, who were sitting on their couches waiting for this football game to start, and they had something very different on their mind. Not only were they watching television, they had their laptops open, their smartphones at the ready, and they were getting ready to jump the hashtag. Now, what does that even mean, jump the hashtag? Well, a hashtag is a Twitter phenomenon that's used to sort and categorize conversations on Twitter so that other people can find them. And Super Bowl 46 included a partnership between the National Football League and the Komen Foundation. The Komen Foundation is a global organization that works on raising the awareness of breast cancer. And you know Komen. They're the reason you can buy pink batteries. Or your soda pop can has a pink ribbon on it. They're also the reason that 300-pound male linebackers run around in pink socks and pink mouthguards. This is a big deal. It's a big brand awareness effort. And Komen and the NFL last year, 2012, had come together to create a hashtag during the Super Bowl called SuperCure. And they got together and they spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of planning. And the idea was that every time you saw this hashtag, you would pass it along. Now, about a few weeks before the Super Bowl last year, Komen did something else. The board of directors of the Komen Foundation had made a decision to cut funding to Planned Parenthood. The board was within their rights. This was their role as board of directors of a nonprofit organization to make this decision. But it didn't go over very well. You're laughing. You remember this, some of you. People were outraged. They felt that this was a huge blow to women's health care. And they didn't sit quietly by. They let Komen know how they felt. They took to the op-ed page and to email and to Facebook and to Twitter, and they let the foundation know that they disagreed with this decision. So there you are, game day. 8 people across the country on their sofas, TV on, Twitter on, and every time they saw the SuperCure hashtag, they retweeted it or replied with a different hashtag. TakeBackThePink. Linked to this hashtag was a constantly growing set of blogs and wikis and Pinterest pages of people telling their own stories, their own experiences with cancer, their own experiences in the healthcare system, and rallying support for other breast cancer charities. Anyone who followed the SuperCure hashtag last year got redirected to the TakeBackThePink hashtag. By the time the game started, those 8 people had grown to a couple of dozen. By the time halftime came around, there were hundreds of people retweeting from SuperCure to TakeBackThePink. And by the time the Giants beat the Patriots, in fact, the SuperCure hashtag had been jumped. Every single instance of that hashtag had been redirected to TakeBackThePink. Those 8 people made a big change. The small group became a big group, and the big group got Komen to change its policy. This is an example of an entirely digital civil society action. A group of people sitting on their sofas is not who we usually expect to change how healthcare funding works. But we ought to start expecting this, because we're seeing it more and more in responses to disasters, in political uprisings, in organizing beach cleanups or neighborhood watches. More and more, digital tools are allowing groups of individuals to come together and make extraordinary things happen. It makes sense, because digitization has already changed everything. It's changed music and movies. We've seen today how it's changed healthcare and education, and it is changing civil society. It's changing how we do what we do. Let me give you another story. Think about libraries. Classic examples of civil society. They're free, accessible resources for everyone in a community. They tend to be supported by tax revenue, volunteers, and charitable donations. Many of the 9,000 plus public libraries in this country are legacies of one of our greatest philanthropic gifts ever, a gift by Andrew Carnegie at the start of the last century that you can still see in communities around the country, like this one in Traverse City. But libraries are much more than buildings with books. They represent some of our truest democratic ideals. They're really about participation, pluralism, and inclusion. They're places where communities come together to make the future brighter. And of course, today, they also have a digital component. Now, I'm not just talking about e-book readers, which you can now borrow at the library, as well as the e-books. I'm talking about something called the Digital Public Library of America, which launched on April 18th. Unlike the building in Traverse City, the Digital Public Library of America is a virtual repository of software code and metadata. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? What that means is it's a way of connecting in a common digital framework every book, every map, every picture, and every participating collection. It means through a single portal you can access all of those materials. Now think about that. That's extraordinary. It's also slightly problematic. If you happen to be an author or a writer, this digitization is a little troublesome. Because think about what happens if you put that first copy of a digital book into a digital library that anyone anywhere can access. Why would anybody ever buy the second copy of the book? Now, this is a problem. It's not an insurmountable problem, but it is a problem. Because we as a society want both authors and libraries. We need to make this work. Digitization is here to stay. We're adding digital libraries to our regular libraries, digital museums to our regular museums, digital schooling to our schools, and digital protests to our football games. We've got to make this work for both the authors and the library patrons. So how are we going to do that? Well, I have to start at the beginning and think about what's different between digital and analog. And I find it easiest to use a metaphor. So I like to think of it as the difference between the land and the sea. Now, where these two things come together, where the land meets the sea, is often a gorgeous place. It can be quite beautiful. but it can also be quite treacherous. We need to learn how to function right at that spot, because that's right where we are right now. So here's the metaphor. The civil society that we know and love, that we rely on, nonprofit organizations, we've built them on land. We've built them around rules that function in an economy that's built around time and money. Those of you who work in nonprofits or who donate to nonprofits or are familiar with nonprofits, who volunteer your time, with basically everybody in this room, knows that most of what distinguishes a nonprofit organization from a for-profit organization are rules about money. Where you get it, what you do with it, who benefits from it. And those rules have worked really well. But in a digital age, the currency that matters is data. Those ones and zeros that make up that digital book in the digital library. And we don't have any rules about data as far as civil society is concerned. That's what we need to invent. Go back for a second, third story, back to those 8 people on their couches. They protested and made some change happen. Not every civil society action involves protest, though. Sometimes people want to build things. Like, I don't know, a global encyclopedia available in 278 languages, produced and managed by 35 million volunteers. 35 million volunteers. I know you know what I'm talking about. I know you know what Wikipedia is, because in any given month, 13% of everybody on the internet goes to Wikipedia. But did you know it was run by a nonprofit organization? Operated under the same rules as the Komen Foundation? Now, can you imagine trying to run a global encyclopedia in 278 languages, 35 million volunteers, and making a unilateral decision about anything? It doesn't work. We wouldn't have Wikipedia if it operated under the governance rules that it's supposed to. They have to shift the rules. And when you think about what's really at work at Wikipedia, there's 2 things there. There are data, ones and zeros, and community. So within the nonprofit structure in which it operates, Wikipedia has managed to thrive by figuring out ways to make data work as well as communities work, and shifting some of the ways that the nonprofit structure holds it back to make it work. Komen is learning these lessons. Wikipedia is showing us the way. But don't get me wrong, Wikipedia is not perfect. And the nonprofit form that it operates under is really just the best available. It's not the best possible. It's a little bit like this, actually. If you think about my analogy of water and sea, Wikipedia is a little bit like this houseboat. We've taken the analog form and we've put it on pontoons. It floats, but I'm not so sure I'd take it down the river. We've got to figure out a better way. We've got to figure out how to make civil society work for all of us when the currency that matters is data. So we need to understand how data work. Once things are digitized, they become shareable in new ways. They become storable in new forms, and they become scalable on a whole new level. So we need to invent rules for the civil society that's going to work in that environment. And we need to make sure that all of us continue to have access to the places where we come together to make change happen. And those places are not the town halls of yesteryear or the town commons. They tend to be commercially owned digital spaces. We need to make sure that our privacy, our right to privacy, is protected in those digital online spaces. Because in order to be public, we need to be private. And we need to make sure that each of us maintains control of our data in those spaces, so that we're not controlled by our data in those spaces. And we need to help our organizations, our institutions of civil society, thrive in an age of digital data, when right now they basically have no guidelines. Because we need to make sure that organizations that are using our data are using it for good, using it with our permission, and asking us before they change their mind and use it for something else. This is where we are today. We're sort of on land with sea levels rising. We're using analog rules in an increasingly digital age. We need to invent these new rules to ensure that you and I can continue to volunteer, to donate, and protest as private people for the public benefit. We need to rewrite the rules of civil society to ensure that nonprofits can continue to thrive in an age when time, money, and data matter. Because this is where we want to be. We want our civil society to thrive in a digital age. Our democracy depends on it. So I want you to keep doing what it is you're doing, to keep doing the good that you're doing and keep using your digital tools to do it. But I also ask you to join me in thinking about what the rules for this new society will be. We're having that conversation using a hashtag, #RecodeGood, and I invite you to join me in that conversation. But as you can probably guess, it's about much more than a hashtag. It's about our democracy. So I look forward to following you there. Thank you.